Good morning, Dan and Amy. And look, Victor Davis Hanson is a storied intellect, but he is also the person, I think, who has provided the most on-point commentary this entire election cycle and continues to. I mean, he's always been good, but this election cycle in distilling what's happening in this country, particularly with respect to the elites and all of the core institutions of a free society. He's just been killing it. And so we're always pleased to have him, which we do again now. Victor Davis Hanson, of course, National Review columnist, senior fellow at the Hoover Institute. Thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So the last two pieces you've written, why don't we start there? You started with this phrase that I've stolen from you and adopted for my lexicon, the non-elite elites. And you had a nice follow-up to the foundation you laid in that piece with your piece this week, Who Are Wise, Who Not, invoking Euripides. And it takes a talent like Victor Davis Hanson to both include Euripides and Brian Williams in the same column, which you did. But you kind of follow up saying what really is wisdom in the 21st century and who is the possessor of said wisdom. So what's the answer?
Well, I think we have to go back to the ancient answer that a person has to be judged on their merits. That is, how they speak, how they reason, how they talk, whether they're balanced between their head and their muscles, what they can fix, what they can build. But we've gotten so far over to this idea that if you have a brand like a cattle branded on your rear end, Harvard or Stanford or Yale, then you're therefore de facto wise. Or if you live in Washington or New York, or you know the right people, or you're in a corporate board, and you're a pollster, you're a reporter, you're therefore wise. Or that if you're Doris Kearns Goodwin, or you're Brian Williams, or you're Fareed Zakaria, and you're a plagiarist or a fabulist, it doesn't matter because you're part of the elite. I think this election kind of just took away the curtain, and we see these people as false, wizards with their little gears and levers, and that's about all they are.
Now, were you personally surprised that Donald Trump won the election?
I wasn't surprised because I think that the two polls, the IBD and the Investors Business Daily and the USC LA tracking, I'd noticed they'd had the best record in 2012, and I had been talking to people who said that they should be discounted, people at Stanford and people who know about polling, and they could never give me an adequate answer. In other words, they never said why they should be discounted. They couldn't refute their methodologies. And then I'd go every month in September to teach at Hillsdale in Michigan, and I never saw anything like it, not like 2004, 8, 12 elections. There was just a sea of Trump signs everywhere. And then finally here at my farm, I would see something that my friends at Stanford would never believe, that 1 out of every 3 Mexican-American people I talked to would either not say they're voting for Hillary or say outright they were voting for Trump. So I thought there was something going on. I wasn't sure how that was going to translate in the Electoral College, and I thought maybe Trump might win the popular vote but not win the particular state.
Well, and
definitely something.
And the interesting thing, too, about some of your recent writings, let me give you an example. You write, is there not wisdom in being able to drop an 80-foot pine tree with a chainsaw within a foot of the mark, or to take apart a hydraulic ram in an hour, or to steer a bulldozer on a narrow uphill road? So a bit of tribute to people that are out in nature, out in the working world, actually working and building things and creating things. But that's not the same thing as to say to recognize the value of those sectors and people who work in them is not to be anti-intellectual, because you're an intellectual. And
no, I have a PhD in classical languages, and I work at Stanford.
Right.
I'm a tenured professor, so
well, I mean,
my whole life has been that. But I also live on a farm, and I have sort of been privileged to see both sides of those. And then my parents would always say, you can't go to Stanford if you're not going to come home and drive on a tractor. And she'd say, if you're going to stay on the tractor all day, you've got to read. So I understand, and you're absolutely right. We owe a lot to formal academic learning, but I think that we've just gone too far in equating that with wisdom. And this election, we had sort of a strange guy, Donald Trump. He had no money. He had no opposition research. He had no ground game. He had no celebrity endorsements. He had no establishment approval. He destroyed the Bushes. He destroyed the Obamas. He destroyed the Clintons. He destroyed 16 people that ran against him, and he had the biggest Republican tsunami since 1920, and nobody saw it coming, and everybody wrote him off. And these are people who, in their particular sectors, it would be like the lumberjack consistently dropping that log right on a house, or the ram having squirting hydraulic fluid out the cylinders. They're not confident in what they said they were doing, and this wasn't the first time they had missed polling data, and so I think we have a groupthink among people of like class, and they're mostly in the cities. They're mostly wealthy white and Asian people. They're mostly highly educated, and they look down at people in between, say, Washington and Menlo Park, California. And I think they've missed out not just on this election, but what makes America tick. And they think, well, Trump can't be a populist because he's a billionaire. Populism is a state of mind. It's if you have empathy and understanding for people who build things. And Trump, for all of his garish Trump this and Trump steaks and Trump, university, he does build things. So he does have an insight to people who weld and go up on girders and pour cement, at least more so than Hillary did. And he was able to tap into that. And I think people have to stop a minute and say, I think our values have to move a little bit back over to the combination of cerebral and muscularity, not just we're in the 21st century, high-tech, Android, whatever it is. And I think we've gone way too far. And unfortunately, there's not enough people to tell these reporters and pollsters and politicians and journalists and academics, you people are missing out on not just people in between the country, but a very valuable part of life that historically has been the essential ingredient of wisdom, mind and body, not just academic training.
Well, and it seems to me the other part of that, building on what you just said very eloquently, is it's not detached either. It's not in the abstract. There's the imposition of will. And so it's not just mocking you or having disdain for you at a cocktail party. It's then getting involved in running your life for you and making decisions like this story this week. Denver County Sheriff's Office slapped with a fine by the Department of Justice for refusing to hire non-citizens as deputies. And, so now you're fining my local police department $10,000 because they won't hire people that are here without citizenship when you have kind of the state of affairs of employment opportunities and upward mobility opportunities for American citizens. And if you question that at all, then the full weight of the elite scorn is visited upon you. And I think people recoiled at that. It's not just making fun of me. It's making fun of me and negatively impacting my life.
And I think the concepts are connected. The elites never suffer the consequences of their own ideology. So on issues like that, or cutting off agricultural water, they never cut off their own water to San Francisco. It comes from the Sierra Nevada. Or they don't live in the inner city, or they don't put their kids in a public school, or their son is not hit by a hit-and-run alien who leaves the scene of the accident. So all the things they have these beautiful ideas about, they have the money, the influence, the in-the-know contacts, how they live, where they put their kids to school, how they travel even. They're insulated from the rest of us who have to suffer firsthand their theories. And I see them in right near Stanford campus where I work, when they all live in gated communities and they dam walls, or they think that we should have sky-high power rates when they live in 70-degree landscapes year-round. And so I think that's one part of the key of this election, was saying, you guys tell us all this stuff, but when we look at you, you never get your job outsourced, or you never get laid off. You always tell other people that their job should be laid off, but your job is never. I never wake up in the morning and somebody from Korea is hired to write a column for me or to do this interview. Yeah. And that happens to a lot of people, and yet they're completely oblivious to it, or they don't care. And so this was a moral, it's a moral election, and the unlikely emissary of that moral change was Donald Trump, and that's what's driving these people crazy.
Yeah, and we still seem to be a nation divided. I don't know how long that's going to last, but do you think Donald Trump, or President-elect Donald Trump, is going to be successful?
He's walking a tightrope wire because he made promises. and he created an image to people in the heartland that they had a champion to drain the proverbial swamp. And then when he got in there, he realizes that, boy, he doesn't want to be a perennial war with the New York Times or the climate change people or all of these people, because they'll destroy him, he thinks. So now he's moving a little bit this way, and he can't move too far, or people are going to say he's just another politician. And that's hard for a populist to do, and we'll see how well he does it. I think if he's smart, he's going to give lip service to the Tom Friedmans of the world, and then just go ahead and do what he promised he'd do. And if he can do that, he'll be a good president. But if he starts backtracking and going back to the middle, he'll be another Jeb Bush, the very person that he attacked. So it's not an easy thing to do, and we'll see how well he carries it off.
All right. He is Victor Davis Hanson, National Review columnist, senior fellow at the Hoover Institute. Victor Davis Hanson, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.